Here we are back with another ranking video, and I already did do a ranking video on ranking the stats, but it wasn't with Mario & Luigi Dream Team. I did it with Partners in Time, and ranking it with Mario & Luigi Dream Team is different for a couple of reasons. Not too different, but definitely a bit different. One, there's another stat, this time we have BP back, and secondly, the Dream World battle system is obviously different from the normal battle system you have with Partners in Time, and obviously in the real world. The real world is pretty similar to Partners in Time, but the Dream World battles are definitely different, and it might actually affect the stats. If you're excited for this ranking, make sure to like the video, and you don't have to subscribe yet. I won't force you to, but if you make it to the end of the video, you might as well, because you obviously enjoyed the video. But other than that, let's get started. Why does this stat sound so cool in concept? Speed is not that useful in the slightest, and the reason why is because you only need a bit more speed to go first in a battle, and if you have abundant more, then there's no real effect on it. Obviously, you still want to up speed, there's no reason not to, but just having a ton of speed is not that useful. Unless you're either playing Paper Jam or Superstar Saga. But if you're either playing Bowser's Inside Story, Dream Team, or Partners in Time, there's no need to up speed that much. Because even if you don't have that much speed, your enemy might go first. But then you get to attack right after. Especially if you're at the end of the game and you have the Duplex Crown. Because, well, you get to go twice anyway, even if it's after the enemy. So you're still doing a ton of damage, which obviously speed isn't helping or hurting. Maybe speed would be cooler if maybe the enemy attacks were slowed down when you had more speed, or you dodged faster. Stuff like that would have probably been really cool with the speed stat, but just right now how it is, it's not that useful. Because, I mean, compare it to Paper Jam for a second. In Paper Jam, the enemies that have more speed than you go more than once, or if you have more speed than the enemies, you go more than once. That's overpowered, and that actually gives some really good use for speed, which is unlucky because that game got rid of the roulette, so you can't really up it like crazy. That's pretty annoying, but it just makes sense with the speed stat to actually give it use. But not in Dream Team. There's no use to up speed that much. This is a stat that I definitely think is underrated, but I do think that Stash is definitely worse in Dream Team than it was in Partners in Time, which is definitely disappointing, but I think the main reason for it is the bros attacks that you actually use at the end of the game. The Z-Egg and the Star Rocket especially. Because in Partners in Time, using stuff like the Copy Flower and the Trampoline, you have a ton of chances to get lucky hits. But in Dream Team, those overpowered attacks don't really have much of a chance to get a lucky hit. Obviously, if you do that one damage that gets a lucky hit, that's great, but there's way less of a chance of it happening, unlike in Partners in Time with Copy Flowers or Trampolines, where you could definitely get a ton of lucky hits, and that just adds up like crazy, which is a bit disappointing. I really like this stat, but just because of its not great use in Dream Team, I had to put it at number 5. I do think it's definitely better than people think, but it definitely isn't great. Also, you get to be a cheapskate at shops. Thanks, hard mode. Because of hard mode, I now understand why HP is genuinely important in this game. Obviously, you want a combination of HP and defense, and obviously I do think that defense is still better. HP is so important in hard mode, because if you don't have enough HP to actually survive a hit, you're going to be one-shot by a ton of enemies, which is in a way why you need to over-level in hard mode, but it's just ridiculous in this game. Even when you think you have a ton of HP, like when I was fighting Intasma X, I had, I think, around 300 HP. No, that's not enough. He two-shots you, basically, which is overpowered. You need a ton of HP in hard mode, which is also a reason why I put HP higher than Stash. Also, again, Stash got worse, but the other fact is that this game does not have easy attacks to dodge, even not in hard mode. Once you get to Somnom Woods and Neo Bowser Castle, there's some really hard attacks that are really difficult to dodge. And obviously hard mode escalates that like crazy. So the more HP you have, the way better you're going to be off. And yes, it's definitely still worse than defense, because you can easily just up defense by, I don't know, buying gear. So I guess it's worse in that way, but I do think HP is still definitely important. And speaking of defense, number 3 is BP. And BP is really, really useful only in the battle medley. Now obviously you need BP throughout the entire game, but if you're over leveled, well, not too over leveled, but when I finished the game I was level 43, I had a lot of BP, and I never ran out for any boss battle that I fought, except for obviously in the battle medley. And so leveling it up too much isn't actually that useful, especially because I also got the rank up perk where I halved the BP cost of every single bros item and Luigi attack. So I really did not need that much BP. So it's definitely a good thing to have a ton of BP in the game, but it's not too useful. Now, if you don't get the perk, you really need it, because costs like 16 and 15 when you have maybe around 80 BP, that's way too little. When you can do 10 of the most overpowered attacks in a row without actually using a syrup, that's good. So if you have a lot of BP, it's really beneficial, but if you don't have too much, it's okay. You don't really need that much BP in the game, which is why it's number 3. Originally, BP was number 2, but I don't think that BP should be as high as I first had it. Are you a tank player, or are you a glass cannon player? I'm a glass cannon player, so number 2 is defense. Now, don't get me wrong, defense and the number 1 is very important, but defense is a little bit less important to me. Now, it was a really hard debate to see that if hard mode would change my opinion on defense, and it didn't. It definitely showed that you need to take out enemies as fast as you can, and defense doesn't help with that. And because of that, it's not number 1. Now obviously you need that barrier if you get hit. So if you get hit, you need that defense to not get one shot. So it's very useful in that regard. But since you could just get a ton of defense from gear, you don't have to up it too much, which is obviously a good thing. You can spread it on either power, HP, stash, because obviously that stat doesn't get upped. So it's definitely a very useful stat, but it makes the game slower if you're relying on defense. So that's why I have it at number 2. Now obviously defense is better than HP, we kind of discovered why, because defense makes you take less HP, which in return, if you have a ton of it, then you don't need to heal as much. So it's definitely a good thing to up defense, but don't up it enough compared to number 1. For the footage that you've seen for the other entries, I really did not have a good reason to put any of them, but at least for Mount Pajamaja, I have a reason to put power to Mount Pajamaja. It's because Mount Pajamaja, their icons focus on strength, and the number 1, power. The thing about power that makes it so overpowered is that the more power you have, the easier it is to take out enemies, and it makes it faster. It means that they attack less, and going back to hard mode, it makes it so much easier to deal with enemies. And obviously, again, you do need that defense if you do get hit. But since I'm really experienced with Dream Team, I don't need to focus on defense too much. Power is the way to go. And because of this, I can up power as much as I want to and then take out bosses really, really easily. So that's why power is number 1. There's no other reason for it, and yeah, obviously there's the debate between Luigi being a powerhouse and Mario being a tank, but no, I really just try to make them both powerhouses because it makes the game so much easier. thank you guys for watching this video. My next video will probably also be on Dream Team, and if you guys get me to 150 subscribers in 2 weeks, I'm pretty sure it's 11 days now, I will do my first video with Super Paper Mario on every single level being ranked. So I'm excited to do that, but you have to get me to 150 subscribers in 11 days. We're getting close, we only need 8 more, so I trust you guys, but you guys have to work for it. Thank you guys for watching this video. Stay tuned for the next one.